Originally, we had many more doors and elevators the player had to use Wheatley to unlock, and as we tested that, we found that players got really tired of doing that. They got frustrated. Oh, I gotta use them again, another door. And every time the player could hold and lock and unlock Wheatley was an opportunity where they could drop him or throw him or try to throw him over the catwalk. And so we decided to just cut down on the numbers of times players had to build with that. So most of the time, we just traveled on his rail. So after all of this testing and getting feedback from within the team and figuring out some design ideas, Wheatley was modeled and rigged. It went together pretty quickly. It was a bit tricky figuring out how to make his eyelids work. A lot of the mechanics are actually pretty believable with how he's put together, but if his eyelids had been totally rigid shells, when his eyelids opened, they were going to noticeably penetrate other parts of his geometry. So, and this was a multidiscipline cabal. So the modeler and rigger turns to the programmer next to him and says, "Hey, can you write a script just to collapse the geometry of Wheatley's eyelids when he opens his eyes?" And did that, and so that's how Wheatley's eyelids open. Just the mesh just shrinks a bit, and it works beautifully. In fact, Wheatley was modeled and rigged once, no changes. You worked perfectly. Just all that testing, all that communicating, and all that planning, all that iterating with little temporary play blasts and things paid off. He was a very successful character. And he, even though he had very few controls, just the way that they could be combined and the way all that planning had happened beforehand, got a lot of variety of expression out of him just from combining all those different controls. For instance, he had some acting language with the size of his pupils that could show whether he was relaxed or a little bit concerned or scared out of his mind. His handles, just by being in different poses, could imitate the movements that humans do for expressions and movements that humans do with their brows and cheeks that accompany their talking. So even Wheatley has no mouth, and he talks nonstop. And so having these brow and cheek stand-ins really helped give the illusion that voice was coming from him. And more subtle things like the language of his eye contact and head hook. I'm sure I can get into a lot more detail about this, but just simple things about whether he's focused at you straight on, or he's looking at you but his eyes start darting away, or his head is turned away but his eyes start darting to you. So just say a lot of subconscious things about what he's thinking and feeling. These add up again to tell that he's got a brain and got motivation. And of course, having those big eyelids were very expressive. The lower eyelid could come up to help with a hint of cheeks that could work with sometimes when he's supposed to be smiling or trying to appease you. It was all very effective. And also a lot of what it went into designing his acting was inspired by hand puppets, which of course then are inspired by human head movements and body movements. There's a way that movements for hand puppets are just stylized versions of what humans do, and some hand puppets don't even have facial movements, so there's a lot expressed by just how the head of the puppet is tilted, and the speed of movements and how fast and slow things are, or the So all of these ideas about stylizing movement that have similar signals to what humans do with their heads and with their faces, that all went into figuring out enacting language for Wheatley. And also with puppets, what you're doing is you've got kind of a repeatable library of little bits and pieces of movements and poses and timing. And your brain is kind of a game engine that's accessing this in real time, because the puppet's being performed in real time. So it's not an infinite library. There's just kind of a certain set of repeatable things that you just keep putting together in different combinations. And so that was kind of an inspiration for how the animation library needed to be established for Wheatley. He had different requirements for different types of animation, depending on whether he was being carried or whether he was on his rail. In those situations, his body could be loose and move around. If he was plugged in, the way the plug worked is it grabbed his handles and held him in place, and so the outer part of his body couldn't move. His handles couldn't move. So similar ways had to be found just using the inner shells of his body to express certain emotions. And for some of the time he was damaged, so there were certain animations that worked with that. Because there was limited time to do custom animations for all of his dialogue. His vocals weren't recorded until very close to the end of the game, because so much of the details of the writing of the story and the dialogue weren't really finalized until close to the end. And we knew this was going to happen. So we knew we just had to work towards that plan, rather than think, oh, the vocals aren't going to be ready until near the end, so we're going to suddenly throw 20 animators at this guy. Instead, just very early on, once the model was ready and was being dropped into the game for testing, just started working on a library of different kinds of animations that could be layered together, so that they could be ready to go once we had the vocals. And I'll show you some of these things, some of these different layers and elements that went into kind of the recipe of making these acting. So just starting out, there was just a very neutral eyelet, had little micro movements of his eye, his body parts, and his brows, just keeping him alive. And once that was established, then just the range of animation of his brows and eyelids could just be adjusted to put him into different moves, or locked off if he was plugged in. Again, so much of this was really based on just a few initial idles or glances, which was like an idol that looked around the environment, and just adjusting the pupil constriction, the eyelids. This one was a bit too crazy. We couldn't really apply this to anything that Wheatley did. So there was some experimentation with that, but mainly came up with a lot of things that we ended up with.